Hey everybody, welcome to Facebook Live number 2, episode number 2. I am doing my best to keep this as informal and mellow as I can, but like everything, I feel a little bit nervous about something new when I'm trying it. So tonight is Wednesday, June 5th, and it is the second episode of Facebook Live. I have not yet determined when I'm going to post live. Can't quite figure out a good time yet in my schedule to consistently do that. But for the meantime, what I'll do is be sure to give people heads up as much as I can, at least 24 hours notice, so that if you can join us, that would be great. And for those of you who might want to share, I'd love to hear a little bit about good times for you. I know evenings, weekends, all that good stuff. So if there's a time that seems to work for everybody, I can certainly do my best to try to make that happen. So for those of you who are watching, thanks for being here. I'd love to hear who you are. I'm managing all of it, so I don't know how to do the talking and the computer monitoring and all of that. So I'll do my best to respond to any comments or questions that you have. And if I miss something, please feel free to send me a comment either directly or an email directly, or else if you're part of our visual journaling group, you can certainly message me in there as well. So anyway, what I want to talk about tonight, and I've written some notes, so you might see me glance down occasionally from time to time. It just helps me stay organized. But what I wanted to talk about tonight was this idea of supports. We always think about coping techniques and all of those sorts of things in terms of how we handle our feelings and emotions and other experiences that might come up in our lives. And support is something that I not only really rely heavily on in my own life, but I stress a lot with clients and others as well, is what kind of supports we need, what kind of supports we reach for, what that looks like. And so I thought I'd talk a little bit more about that tonight. And the simplest version, the simplest definition of what a support is anything that makes us feel better or brings us some relief. Even if the relief is a numbness or kind of a flatness in our energy, that's still considered a support. Supports in many ways get bad rap. We get a hard time for that. Oftentimes we feel pretty okay with and positive about the supports that we deem good supports. Things like meditation or mindfulness or yoga or therapy or exercise, things that we feel positive regard for. But oftentimes it's really hard to not only notice that certain other things are also supports, but to have gentleness or compassion or acceptance for those too. But supports are supports, and they're absolutely essential and necessary if we're going to have any kind of emotional process or existence. And so all supports are important. Even things like compulsions or obsessions or emotionally eating or incessantly playing video games or numbing out to hours and hours of Netflix or other kinds of television. Even an addiction is a form of important emotional support. I didn't say satisfying. Most people who struggle with addictions or things like emotional eating or other sort of things that interfere with our satisfaction, we have a hard time with those. But even an addiction can be a support. I like to think about supports in sort of these two camps. So there are supports that I kind of like to think about as growth supports, and there are supports that I often like to think about as relief supports. And whatever pool of supports we're reaching for in any given moment is really important, because in that moment, what we need is support. So an example of a growth support might be, say, having a rough time or a rough day, and we're able to reach out to someone or have our feelings about that. Say you're a little kid and you come home from school and you just had a rotten day, and somebody sees that and they say, hey, come here. Don't worry about your chores. Don't worry about your homework. Let's see what's going on and let's work through this. And they stay with us, and we can move through the experience and come out on it the other side. In that case, we got support that really enhanced our growth. It helped us process and clear another piece so that it didn't get stuck in our bodies and turn into some kind of disease or illness down the road. Now, sometimes we get support that looks more like had a rotten day at school, we come home and because of everything else going on in other people's lives, nobody's available to us to see that we're upset or that we had a rough day, and we might need some gentleness or patience. And instead, they kind of climb our case or tell us to get our chores done or force us to do sorts of things. And eventually we just maybe end up in our bedroom or, somewhere in the house watching TV or playing video games for 8 hours straight. Well, in that case, video games are still a support. It's just a form of support that only brings us relief. It doesn't actually move us through the experience. That's also true with things like emotional eating or compulsions or addictions and things like that. If I'm experiencing a feeling and it is bigger than what I have the supports to work through and feel, and most of this is unconscious, then I'm going to reach for some kind of support, either deeply satisfying support that helps us process and move through, or support that numbs me out or distracts me or at least buys me a little bit of time and relief. And truthfully, we need all those forms of support. Anytime we give ourselves a hard time about how we have learned to emotionally support ourselves in those rough spots, it's like beating up on the kid inside of us for doing whatever they needed to do, adapting in whatever way they needed to adapt around particularly difficult or painful feelings. And so it's essentially what happens when we go after ourselves, even now as an adult. So the next time that you find yourself engaging in some kind of behavior that you feel less than accepting of or less than positive about, I want to give you a little experiment to try, if you're open to that. In addition to giving yourself a hard time in that moment about what you're doing or why you cannot stop something or make a different sort of choice, in addition to all of that, okay, so don't have to stop doing that, because that in and of itself is a form of distraction from a deeper feeling. So don't worry about stopping that piece of that. But in addition to that, what I want you to do is to experiment with adding one more thing to that equation. So very simple piece of support that I want you to experiment with, if you'd like to, is to simply, in addition to all of that, say to yourself, I wonder if what I'm doing, I wonder if this is a support for me. Or I wonder if what I'm thinking or choosing, I wonder if there's a way that this is an emotional support for me. And ask the question not to get an answer, all right, but just to start adding another piece of support to the equation. Because there's obviously something very important about what it is that you're doing that feels like it can't be done differently. Otherwise, you wouldn't do it. We're wired to move towards things that feed us and satisfy us and help us grow. So in any of the places we feel stuck or unable to change something that feels very disruptive, there's something very important about that. So try it. Give it a shot. See what happens. If you'd like, I'd love to hear more about your experiences and supports that you have in your life right now, the ones you appreciate about yourself as well as the ones that you don't. Feel free to like my Facebook page and follow me in there. Join my visual journaling group on Facebook to make comments. There's a tab there that you can hit, and I'll put other links in the comments below. And for those of you who might be interested, I will be launching my visual journaling class. It's an online course that is designed to help you learn how to begin working with the feelings and experiences that are happening deep inside of us. So it's a class that is designed to help you learn some tools for beginning to tap into those unpleasant places, the places that keep us stuck in the compulsions or the addictions or the emotional eatings. And if you like what you've heard today, don't forget to click on the follow button on live videos and videos that were live so that you get all the notifications the next time that I go live. So for those of you who were able to join me, or for those of you who are watching again later, thanks a lot for tuning in. And if you have any questions or follow-ups on it, please feel free to reach out to me. And if you'd like, join the visual journaling group, and hope to see you there. Thanks. Bye-bye.